Okay, so first, welcome to the Circular Economic Club, Circular Cities Week 2021 event hosted by the Miami chapter. My name is Lais. I'm here with Coverance, etc., a local business member at the Miami chapter. And the Circular Cities Week is an international event which takes place every year to support the United Nations World Cities Day in October. And the Circular Economic Club is represented by over 280 countries with local chapters. And this week, the goal is to encourage the design and implementation of circular economy strategies in cities around the world. At the end of this week, the Circular Economic Club will collect all summary reports from all chapters with their takeaways to be included in their international annual report. Now, I would like to introduce our facilitator, Barbara Garcia, who is a local sustainability consultant with a passion with education and communication. Barbara is a principal at Notia LLC, a realtor, a lead grade associate, a US GVC market leader, and a true zero waste advisor. So Barbara understands circularity like no other, and will now introduce our panel and proceed with today's talk. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you so much, Lais. And thank you, Ofer, for inviting me to be here with you guys today. Last year, I was able to join as a panelist, and so I'm happy to be here helping moderate this year. And we have a really great panel plan for you guys. So basically, in thinking about the goal for today, we had a way that we wanted to frame the conversation, because in order to attain a strategy, there's a lot of collaboration that needs to happen and a lot of education across different levels. So you're going to hear today from a variety of panelists that are going to be both from the private, the public, and the nonprofit sector. I myself have had the pleasure of working in all three. I went to the University of Florida, and I have a degree in agricultural communications and leadership development. So I've really studied a lot of what it takes for leaders to be able to accomplish big goals and how to motivate people to basically get behind a big idea, because it takes so much. It takes more than a person. It takes a village, and Ray Rubio can speak to that. He's been working on some of his projects for many, many years, and he can tell you how much collaborating he's had to do over the years across all different agencies. And so today we're going to basically have each panelist come online. They're going to tell you a little bit about themselves, a little bit about what they do. Ray and Ofer will be more materials based, and then Barbara is here from Dream and Green, and she does amazing work for the community and with our schools. And so we're going to be hearing from her and how she kind of collaborates with the government agencies and works obviously on the education level on a daily basis. So in order to achieve a circular economy, like I said, it's very important for people to work together and collaborate. There's a lot of innovation that needs to happen, and in turn, a lot of education. So we know that sustainability, there's always a learning curve, right? There's always something that all of us on this call are not aware of. There's always a new product on the market. There's always a new initiative. And so how do you keep up with that? You know, how are you able to really communicate across all levels and be up to date on what is the latest material that has come out? I'm sure Ofer could speak to, you know, he's probably up every night trying to find out what is the next best thing that I can use. And so, you know, what drives that is research. And what I was talking about with Ofer is how important it is for us to focus on educating, so that people know that these materials exist, so that people know that materials can have a second life. And without the education portion, we're not going to be able to accomplish these big goals or try to enact these strategies. So that is a big a part of what we're going to be talking about today. And so what I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit with my background is I had a couple of years ago, I was able to work in a joint powers government agency role. I worked out in California with Redwood Coast Energy Authority, and I helped launch a power aggregate. And it was a really interesting process that took them 10 years. And the amount of like stakeholder engagement and community engagement that they had to enact in order to even have this program be accepted by the community, it was huge. And so it was very interesting to be on the ground level of that and be at a JPA where there was a lot of coordination, because we were working with the utility company. We were also working with the community and with the local government. And so, you know, things get interesting when you have to take the community's opinion into consideration before you're able to achieve these big projects and these big goals. And so that was a really interesting experience for me. They were successful in launching the power aggregate. So basically, the JPA became in charge of selecting where the power was being bought for those communities. And so the community had a say in where, you know, how much wind did they want? How much solar did they want? And so that was a really interesting experience for me that really opened my eyes to, wow, this took them almost 10 years to accomplish. And they also worked with the university. They worked with Humboldt State University. And I mean, you don't really understand it until you're in it and you're in those board meetings and you're really witnessing what it takes to be able to enact a strategy. And so that's kind of, you know, what has driven my passion, are experiences like that. And then also my work with US Green Building Council and the local market leader. And through that, I was able to meet Ray Rubio, and I already had a passion for recycling. But what opened my eyes, and I really am thankful for Ray for that, is learning about that there's so many other materials out there that are not discussed, that maybe they're not as readily available as steel, but they still do exist, and there is a market for them. And we need to help educate, right, our local politicians, our private sector, our developers on these materials so that they start using them. And so with my work with Ray's an MEP and a private provider with the city. And he kind of, you know, as far as was doing in the traditional sense of a private provider and working as more of a GC, he decided that he also was more interested in innovative materials than anything else, because that's the future. That's what drives the future. And that's what drives change at the end of the day. So, you know, I hope that I kind of set the floor for the conversation. And then also we will tie this into education, and I'll mention it a little bit towards the end, but we do need to pay attention to the youth and to our college level students who maybe are not as knowledgeable in what materials or what career paths are available to them within the sustainability world, which is obviously going to drive our circular economy. And so we just want to let you guys know, if there's students on this call, that you guys are very important. So we hope that something within these conversations will spark your interest. And so with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Ofer so he can talk to us a little bit about, he's our circular economies expert and some of the work that he does with his materials.
Hi, thank you for everybody for joining. We had a few conversations about the circular economy, and I'm interested in that for you know, over 10 or 15 years now. And we can see the difficulties that coming with that. For people to understand that basically every piece of trash that they have can be used again as a raw material. The fact is that here in the US, we are representing 5% of the world population, but we are responsible for 25% of the world's waste. So the amount of waste that we are generating is unbearable for our cities, for our environment. Now, one of the issues when you try to develop there are a few issues, but we try to develop new materials. Even if you want new materials, there are technologies, and especially in Europe, but also in the US, you can see a lot of technologies that are existing for interesting materials to use from fashion, not only for building materials, but for fashion or households or anything else. The thing is how to bring it into scale, because people can do, and you can see people doing some work, but they cannot scale it, because in order to get things into scale, it requires big investments. Now, big companies had smaller interest to do that, because if they do that, what they do, they invest in new technologies and they're kind of cannibalize themselves or cannibalize their own product. So they had no interest in that. That's where we see the importance of governments in to demand these things. And governments could be our local governments, if it's the cities or school boards or anybody else, that when they buy chairs or tables or doing the construction and anything else, that it will have, they need to see the circularity and of the material when they buy it, but also the end of life of the material, what's going to happen with that. And also the lifespan, because if we see that a lot of things happen, people look only on the budget they have now, but they purchase products that are for short term. So then every 2 years they need to replace it. So they're creating more garbage, and they just supposedly keep the budget, but it's all short term vision. And that's a problem that's an issue that must change. Also, we can see that it takes time when you create a material and for the material or the technology to mature and for people to accept it. And it's not that we're comparing, but we can see that like even a revolutionary company like Tesla was founded in 2003, and it was so hard for them, maybe only until now that they're getting to the mainstream, that even in the latest news that like, let's say Hertz signed a deal to buy 100,000 Teslas for their fleet. But it took them 18 years with that, and people were pushing back. And the big companies only now, again, because they were afraid to change, they invested so much in the old technologies, they didn't want to invest in these new technologies, and they are behind. So, but you can see in companies like Tesla, but also in other companies that are doing fashion like Nike or Adidas, that they are looking at the program of take back. So the end of the life of the product, it doesn't matter if it's a shoe or a chair or a car, the company is building the product in a way that it could be recycled or upcycled in a clear and easy way. And so I think that's something that all of us in anything that we do, we need to push governments to demand, because it will come from there. So because governments, after all, spending our money, so we can ask for that our money will go towards companies that have this technology. I'm done for my part now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ofer. It's very true. Like you said, people have to get on board and have to be able to design products that either have a longer life or have a second life. We need to be innovative. So that's very, very true. So next we're going to have Barbara from Dream and Green join us. She is a lovely lady. I've had the pleasure of working with her before, and I'm going to go ahead and let her talk to you guys a little bit about the work that she does.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Barbie, for that intro. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this panel. And thanks to everybody that is attending and my fellow panelists. So my organization is a nonprofit that we're now celebrating our 15th year. And really our mission is to empower individuals to solve the climate crisis and other environmental issues at the local and national level. And we do that through education. And, Barbie mentioned that education is extremely important. And we have a couple of programs that relate to the circular economy. One that specifically focuses on teaching about sustainability to students at the pre-K through 12th grade level, and that's our Green Schools Challenge. And that program really is about looking at the school itself, as well as the curriculum. And so we talk throughout the year, we have various themes in the program that focus, for example, on energy efficiency and conservation, water conservation, on waste management and recycling, food security, alternative transportation, and air quality, as well as green buildings is one of the topics. Are the six main topics that we deal with at the school level. And so how we integrate that program is that we train the teachers. So we have professional developments throughout the year in which we promote not only these concepts of sustainability, but also help teachers teach these concepts at the school level. And so, of course, the lessons are age appropriate because, you can't start talking about circular economies with a kindergartner, but there are certain concepts that they understand. And one of the simplest concepts that I think that we've seen, throughout is recycling. Knowing how to recycle and why recycling is important. I feel that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was only, certain people that knew what recycling was. I feel that now everybody understands what recycling is. Whether they do it or not is a different story. But I think we all understand the concept. So the way our Green Schools Challenge program works is specifically taking a look at holistically at sustainability, breaking down the topics, and integrating lessons so that those concepts are more real to the students, and they keep building upon each other. So, for example, as I mentioned, recycling is a topic that is very popular. So at the elementary school level this year, we're focusing on, what products, what companies have already used recycling, and how they can use objects at their home to create something new, to reuse it. So we've had them do t-shirts, old t-shirts, and create them into bags, or have them create instruments out of recycled material, out of materials that they would be thrown out recycling. So there's a whole bunch, and Barbie's putting in some other ideas. And so by starting at that concept, at the younger level, and looking at things that and introducing those concepts in a way that they can see it, understand it, and explain it to others, we can build upon as we get to the middle and high schools. And at the high school level, one of the concepts this year, for example, at the middle and high school level, we're talking about the idea of cradle to grave for items that are commonly used. So, this tying in perfectly with circular economy, where they pick an object and they basically trace it back to what does it take to get that product to market, to your house. And so, what is this material? What are the materials that compose this? How are those materials created, or grown, or collected? How are they put together? How are they packaged? How are they sent to a store? And then what do you do after that? How do you dispose of that object once it is no longer viable? So that could be, if it's unedible, is it something that you can compost? And so there's concepts and lessons about composting. There are, at the higher level, that the high school students are looking at buildings, at the buildings itself, and how to make those buildings more efficient. So, for example, a partnership we have, and our organization really depends a lot on great partnerships that we have. One of the partnerships for the last couple of years that we've worked with students at FIU's School of Architecture. And those students have become mentors for some of our high schoolers. And so every year they help them with a design concept that talks about, and every year is different, but that helps them look at a building and how to make it more efficient. For example, last year's theme was how to build in the coast to adapt to sea level rise. And so what materials would they use? Some students at FIU help them think about where would those materials be sourced? Why would those materials work better for this particular, location? And so those are some of the concepts that our high school students are being introduced through our program. At another program, our Water and Energy Learning and Behavior, we work a lot with municipalities. So again, talking about working with government officials. That program really goes into communities all over Miami-Dade County to talk about the water and energy nexus. How is our water and energy connected? Why is it important to conserve water and energy? What are some ways that you can do that at a personal level? And how can you advocate for those at the local level, at a higher community level? So for example, we are partnering with, City of Miami, City of Doral, City of Coral Gables, to go into their communities and do these workshops to talk about where does our water come from? Again, tracing back so that these concepts are not concepts that they don't understand, or that maybe just thinking about where that you might have not thought about. So where does their water come from? Everybody, always has, I think a lot more people know now, but a lot of people think, oh, well, it comes from, Okeechobee. Well, not really, and so why is rain so important? Because, why is sea level going to affect us the way it is? All of those questions that is forcing people to kind of trace back not only what they thought they knew, but how everything impacts one another. And so some of our other initiatives that we're working with the government we're currently partnering with City of Miami to do a couple of case studies within the city of buildings that are going through the BE 305 challenge, which is the Building Efficiency 305. And so the county and city are looking on how to make buildings more efficient, so that they waste less resources. And so looking at buildings that are 20,000 square feet to above 500,000 square feet. And obviously they're very different challenges for each. And one of the things that we're seeing is because of different ordinances that are happening in various cities, like the electronic vehicle ordinance that just passed in the city of Miami, some of the other ordinances that are being passed through the city of Miami Beach or city of Coral Gables. A lot of the time, the general community doesn't know why these ordinances are important, how they were created, and how is it going to benefit them in the long run. So that's where education, again, is very important, and that's where an organization like ours comes in. And our final project that we're working on that deals with, again, tracing back and looking at what we on a personal level can do. We are creating an app that will help residents in Miami-Dade County know what is recyclable and what is not recyclable curbside, or where they can go take some others so that they can have a second life. Where can they take those electronics? Where can they take that couch? Besides, throwing that couch outside and, have issues with illegal dumping, which again, brings in a whole other environmental issue that cities are having to deal with when they have to pick up additional trash that that shouldn't be there. And so a lot of that is lack of education. What do I do with my couch if somebody doesn't haul it away, or I don't take it to to Goodwill or something like that? So again, is taking a look at our environment and how everything is connected. And so that's what our programs do. And we do that through our different partnerships with, for-profit or other nonprofits and government entities to be able to get the word out there and help, think about more deeply how everything is connected or circular.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Yeah, that is just so true. And all I heard was education, education, education. You're just teaching people all day, government officials, the community. So thank you so much. The work that you do is really important, especially what you do in our schools. And so last but not least, I'm going to pass it over to Ray Rubio, who is with MEP World Group. And as I mentioned, he is a private provider, and he does a lot of really cool and interesting, probably big projects you've seen all around the city. And he's gonna provide just some instances on case studies regarding a project at University of Miami, and also a skate park made with some really interesting materials. So Ray, take it away.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you guys, and same topics that you guys are touching on is what I would probably touch on the most, is educating folks and educating them correctly about these materials and how to keep this circular economy, circular city continuing to roll. That being said, in South Florida, I'm an electrical engineer by schooling, civil masters. I have a CGC license, so I've had the pleasure of being a design builder and then being a materials design and implementer at the same time. We focus around structural reinforcement, alternatives to steel. Obviously, we know what catastrophes have occurred here in South Florida as a result or indirect result of using steel and certain concrete types. So we focused on that for the most part, and that's where our focal point has been. We work with the University of Miami under a service agreement, and we worked with them on their Innovation Bridge. Their Innovation Bridge is on campus, and it's a small pedestrian bridge that was built 95% out of basalt fiber reinforced polymers. Basalt is a volcanic rock that is mined, a single mined ore. Its loss of ignition is nearly zero. So it's a very sustainable, resilient material that we can use as an alternative to steel. Beauty to it is that it has a very long proven track record. The Romans used to build with this material. So their structures, the Pantheon, Colosseum that are still standing, and they were built with this material, with their ancient technology. We've used that technology with future or advanced technologies now, and really created something that's a quarter of the weight of steel, that does not rust, so you don't have the issues of rusting. You could actually use salt water from coastal areas to make your cement or concrete with this, because you have no risk of chloride intrusion into your actual reinforcement. Right now, let's say 8% of the total carbon emissions of the world are Portland cement, strictly Portland cement. So we figured if by adding these fibers and adding some other nano materials that we use, we could really bring down the carbon footprint, bring in what is going to be a better circular economy down the road, because these materials have a life cycle of minimum 100 years. And at the end of their life cycle, as Barbie can attest to, when we did Lot 11 skate park, we used recycled concrete for fill. FDOT did not allow us. And I'll tell you, that's the most complicated public-private joint venture I think anyone's ever seen. It was Dade County, City of Miami, Miami Parking Authority, Florida Department of Transportation, and a nonprofit. So it was probably the most complicated public-private joint venture you could involve yourself in. We took the task of taking that on. And if you go by I-95 and on the off or on ramp on 3rd Avenue or 3rd Court, you can view this park. The park is made 95% out of basalt reinforced polymers, which again are a quarter of the weight of steel. So your transport was 4 times less than you would in steel due to the weight. We used water from the river in some applications for some of the flat groundwork. So because since it was outdoors, we reduced the water usage. We contained the water on site, which was a big task because you have an off ramp and an on ramp. And the biggest thing for us was that FDOT said it really clearly, we need to be able to demolish this in 2 weeks if we have an emergency. So we had to figure something that would be easy to demolish if they had to, something that nobody would like, but I mean, there are emergencies that occur. So we were daunted with this task, and we pleased them in what we did with that. Again, what Barbie mentioned, we did the first all composite bridge with the University of Miami, and we've been implementing different alternative means of using localized materials, certain minerals that are right off our shores that are sustainable. They sustain themselves over 100 million tons a year. We use biochar that's from a gasification or pyrolyzed process to make a fly ash that we call graphene. Some people might have a negative connotation of graphene, but when you entrap it into concrete or into a composite, you're now embodying that carbon for 150 to 100 plus years. So it's something that down the line will still give you a recycled material that you can use as an aggregate that's strong, that's light, that it's reducing your carbon emissions currently and giving you less wear and tear on your roads. If you have less transport as a result of not having so much steel and so many trucks going through, you're not wearing down on your roads. You can have workers not be taxed as much, so you can get local labor that would be open to not having to be in 100-degree atmosphere and holding heavy steel that is, can practically burn your hands at that temperature. This stuff, it actually contains heat, so you don't have that issue. And since it's a quarter of the weight, you can have few guys do the work of many, or what machines would do. We've implemented this throughout several regions of the U.S. in projects, and our main focus is here in South Florida, obviously, and in the South Florida region. We feel like with sea level rise and what's happening now, if you guys haven't noticed, there's seawalls collapsing everywhere, all around the city of Miami, all around Dade County. And we want to be a lending hand in doing this correctly. We want to make sure that these materials are true, sustainable, and non-evasive materials. We know what can happen with sulfates and phosphates with reefs, and we know what can happen with some of these other materials if not treated correctly. I'm a witness to that. Number one, I've seen Fowey rocks go from being a live reef system to completely dead and bleached out. And this is stuff directly related to some of the work that was done in and around seawalls in South Florida. So we're here to help and really push the fact that education is the key. If you do not educate those kindergartners, those first graders, those young folks into what you were saying, Barbara, into high school, into getting them to understand what real materials can locally be used and locally be used in a proper manner. Like Ofer mentioned what Nike did. Nike got Traz-Powell Stadium and got all recycled Nike shoes and did the entire stadium out of the old rubber from the shoes. There's many ways to reuse these materials and use them in the economy and with your entire community. I think the outreach and us continuing to have these conversations and put this out there for other people, I think that's what's important. We're obviously actively pursuing this. We're working with the Department of Energy right now to put this all into GREET. If you guys are not familiar with that program, I would recommend anybody who does LCAs to really look into it. It does everything cradle to grave, and it gives you a full quantification by the Department of Energy. And lo and behold, when we first made our presentation, they didn't have 2 versions of some of the material we had that we make in there, which is a biographene and a saltwater cementitious material, and or basalt, which is one of the materials that we use primarily. So it's, again, education, continuing to collect data from these educational institutes. And we work with University of Miami, University of West Virginia, with University of Missouri Science and Technology, MIT. We just try to outreach to as many folks as we possibly can to make sure that the message gets across. Also reaching out to your local authorities and your building officials, your planning, zoning officials, seeing if you can get credits for doing green space, for doing retainment areas, for rainwater. These are the kind of things that I think would make a difference in keeping a circular economy and keeping us self-sustained.
Awesome. That's so very true, Ray. I mean, the work that you do is really important. And as you guys heard, it takes a lot of collaborating and research with different institutions and working with different government agencies. And, you know, one of the goals that I had spoken to with Ofer, you know, of today, I didn't really see any questions come through the chat, so I'm happy to kind of guide the conversation, but we did talk about, you know, well, where do we go from here and what can we do? And, you know, Ofer said that he would potentially like to try to figure out an initiative that we could pitch to the city of Coral Gables. They seem to be very receptive. I know I personally have worked with them and work with their mayor, and, you know, potentially we could come up with some sort of initiative, a goal that we have that we think that Coral Gables would be on board with. We did talk about this goal, incorporating high school students or working with students within the Coral Gables community. So, you know, these are all just ideas. I mean, Ofer kind of were talking about earlier, but, you know, we would love to have something come of this and try to, you know, put some sort of initiative forward and try to create some change. And like Ray said, you know, encourage the education, because yes, like they're up to speed on sustainability. They're understanding recycling, they're understanding water reduction. They're starting to understand these concepts, but now is really important to tie everything together and really get these government officials on board with an initiative that, you know, really is going to make an impact or set them apart. I know personally with US Green Building Council, there's a lot of local cities who have applied for the Lead for Cities, and they have achieved it and received the Lead for Cities. It's a grant that is, they're able to receive money, I believe, from Bank of America. Was the last set of monies that was given out. And this money is impactful because obviously this is going to give them, you know, maybe the funds that they didn't have access to be able to enact some of these policies or strategies. So I had a couple of questions that maybe we can kind of to guide the conversation. I did want to talk a little bit about giving things a second life. And I did want to ask Ray about recycling of construction waste, or, you know, like how can, like, what is the current status within the market? Like, are most developers recycling their construction waste? Like, and this is excluding the ones who are achieving LEED and going, you know, the extra mile. Are the average developers recycling their construction waste? If they're not, why not? And how can we get them to do that, you know?
I think that it's more of a cost issue rather than anything else. I mean, you're right, 100%. I see, and I have many developers that are applying for LEED, or they're trying to go through the process of Florida Green Build, and they do not do anything with their construction waste except put it into a dumpster. 50% of that is plastic bottles that are thrown into these dumpsters, I have yet to see a real developer show interest in that when they should, when they absolutely should. Maybe they feel like if they had an incentive from government for it, they might be a little more inclined. Or if we made collaborative efforts with someone who's recycling that kind of material. For instance, I failed to say this example, but we've done something with some folks in Hialeah that do marble cutting for slabs and for granite. We use their cut pieces as part of our cementitious aggregate, and we crush it and reuse it. And so right now they're dumping it. They're dumping it in a 10, 20 yard dumpster. It's not separated from regular waste. So it's going into the, going to the landfill. And I mean, yeah, it's a stone. It's not really invasive in that sense, but you don't really want that to take up that space. So making efforts, identifying those specific things,
right,
identifying things that can be recycled and can be reused properly in your economy. And that's the biggest issue, I think.
Yeah. Do you have anything to speak on that, Ofer, on the waste?
Yes, definitely. And that's, when I say education, education is not necessarily for kids, because, we have people, Miami-Dade, for example, Miami-Dade is the only county in the nation.
Oh, we can't hear you. We lost you. No. You're not on mute. No. No, still can't hear you. Can you call on your phone? Oh, we can't hear you. See if he can, Jody, pull out his headset. No, you're muted now. No, oh, okay. So while Ofer does that, so I don't know, Barbara, can you speak to anything in regards to, I mean, as far as construction waste or with the county and initiatives that you, or any strategies that you think we could help in this kind of environment?
I don't have much about construction waste, but definitely waste is a big issue. I think as Ofer was getting to it, and a lot of people that we go out and do community outreach programs. They ask, oh, the county's not recycling and they tend to blame it on like government. And it's like a blame game. Like, whose fault is it that things are not getting done? Is it the government? Is it people that are not willing this to happen? Is it businesses? And so waste is one of those that I feel like, everybody has an issue with it, and there are so many ways that we can solve it, but we're not there yet. And so when we go out and talk to people about recycling, something that they could easily do at their home, there's so much miscommunication because of the way things are set up. They don't understand that it's not necessarily dependent on the government and what gets recycled or not. It's what is actually wanted by business. So it's like people say, oh, we should be recycling, glass, aluminum, cardboard. Why isn't the county recycling this or not? But the issue is, if there's no companies out there that want that material, then they're not going to recycle it, because what's the incentive? It's not, there's no monetary incentive.
Right. It's a hassle for them. Yeah.
Exactly. It takes more. And so, this is where innovation and business, it also needs to take a little kind of push to try to get initiatives, because I wouldn't know where to go and tell people for their construction waste. Where does that go?
With it, right.
Let alone, I mean, we can't even figure out what kinds of plastics we can recycle where, you know?
And well, and even like Ray said, it's like, and even when you tell them where, it's like they have to do it properly, right? Because then, like he said, then you've got the dumpster and it's commingled and they didn't even separate everything properly, right? So then it's like a wash, you know? So
Right.
and I can speak a little bit to, as far as being a true zero waste advisor, I will say one thing that they, is like really important as part of that process is on the early phase of purchasing, Barbara, I'm sure as working with the county, is that basically like you need to start all the way at the beginning as a what is coming into the building and what is it made of, and like Ofer said, like, oh, you bought some chairs. Well, did you think about what's the chair made out of? Why didn't you buy a chair made with recycled content or post-consumer recycled content? So that true zero waste is kind of starting to catch on a little bit, but I really just decided to do it to learn a little bit about how to close that loop. And it starts all the way at the beginning with purchasing and like literally what are they signing off on, and if you don't put in those policies all the way at the beginning, or those systems, like you said, okay, this is where you recycle this very specifically, then the building's not going to do it, the staff's not going to do it,
It's working.
and falls to the wayside. Ofer, we can
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, fantastic. Sometimes I think it's conspiracy of the girls in my office to shut me down.
They don't want to know.
So, no, they don't want me to talk. Anyway, so I don't know where I stopped, but first of all, it's another thing because you mentioned the 305, this project in Miami, and I know that we are at Miami Ironside, that we are located, and we are part of it at the Miami 305. And Jody, from our office, she's running it like the whole and working on energy efficiency, investing in going towards to be a zero waste property. And whoever have a property and manage it know how hard it is, because you won't get any collaboration from waste management. And even if you try to have a recycle bin, they come with the same truck and put it in everything in the same truck. You can divide to whatever you want. So the only way to recycle, let's say, cardboard boxes is to build a special cage and to call one of these guys that come with the pickup truck to pick them up and recycle. Otherwise, it will go to the landfill. We are trying in events taking care over here. We are forbidding any event to use plastic cups or utensils. And if somebody insists, we just don't accept the event. And we don't do any event that have any plastic. We're willing to lose from that, but I think the loss is in the short term because a lot of people appreciate it and they insisting to have the events here. And I would call it the old-fashioned way, not to use everything plastic. With materials, with the recycling of materials, there is so much to do. The thing is not like, oh, I start with that now. I know I catching. Most of us are immigrants over here. Everybody come from another country, and everybody speaks. Oh, a lot of people speak different languages or different accents and with different backgrounds. So nobody really cares. And if you go to places that people care more, like in Europe, there are no more landfills. There's nothing like that to anything go to a landfill. If you go to Sweden, 99% of whatever they trash gets recycled to be something else. The only 1% maybe get burned because it's a medical or any kind of stuff that cannot be recycled. Their capacity of recycling their garbage is more than 100%. It's maybe double than whatever they produce garbage. So what happened, let's say in England, sending their garbage to Sweden to get recycled. I don't see why we cannot do it here in the US again, and it comes again to the governments, to anything. But we need also to show self-example and to push. I'm sure that each one of us, when they go home today, they'll find maybe 1 or 2 or more packages from Amazon that came in during the day. And one of the things that I would like to encourage or to see how to do that, Amazon will pick up the empty boxes in their trucks. We don't need to put it in our municipal recycling. That will be maybe a stage one for them, not to send like if you buy a pen, you receive it in a box, it can contain, I don't know, a couch, you understand? Because they don't care.
Yeah.
And with all the plastic inside to protect the pen, that's completely ridiculous. So I think if we find a way to start with these little things that each one of us at home, I don't know how to do that. And that's definitely is a political thing. And that's something that I would love to offer, let's say, to a small city. I'm going to reach out again. I was really impressed with the city of Coral Gables and what they want to do. And maybe a city like that, they can enforce Amazon to pick up their empty boxes, so it's not going to become a burden on the taxpayers. And it become a burden on Amazon, that they're making the money from that. Pick up their stuff, recycle it, make sure that it's recyclable. You make sure that whatever you use for packaging. So these things that we can enforce on it every day, I believe that will be a good start for all of us. Governments obviously moving slower, but we need to choose. But if we won't fight for it on a daily basis and educate our friends, our family, our clients, our suppliers, and refuse to get things in a certain way, and we won't go anywhere. Now, obviously, when you buy things, a lot of people look only, let's say if you go to fashion or if you buy for building materials, you don't know where it came from or where it goes at the end of life. And if people will demand when they go to buy an apartment or buy a house to see what are the materials, ask and demand and try to choose something else, it will help because people will look for it. And it's not because a lot of the big companies doing some activity, they say we're recycling this or doing that, it's just like a greenwash just to cover, like you know, number one of this is Coca-Cola, for example, or Pepsi. They are number one plastic producers or contaminators of the world. So so that's where it is. The thing is how, and the challenge is, okay, we're all talking about these things, how we can have a follow-up on these things, if there is any way that we can take a step forward to feel that we really made a dent into the surface over here.
Well, I really like that idea of they refer to that as a take back program for the Amazon boxes. And I think that I know Cradle to Cradle with USGBC has kind of been pushing for some of those initiatives, and actually the True Zero Waste, it very much rewards you for working with vendors who are willing to come and do those take backs, right? I can tell you this, Ofer, I live up in Coral Springs, and I drive by, you know, they have one of their big compounds. It's just south of me right here off of Commercial Boulevard and 75. And I mean, it's massive, like massive warehouses. I mean, like for them to tell us that they can have some sort of take back program and dedicate part of, you know, those warehouses to be able to store that cardboard. I mean, they definitely have the space, you know, I would
You're
think.
talking about Amazon.
Talking about Amazon. Yep.
Yeah, but then maybe they don't want to store it. Maybe they want to take it to a recycler, but they make sure that this stuff go to a recycler, that they can work. They should worry about that.
Yeah. And or at least create a program for, you know, I ordered a new package. When you come to my house, I should be able to leave my old boxes there and they take them, you know.
Or the other thing, if will be like maybe a Walmart or somebody else will be able to start to be competition to Amazon, and they will offer this service. So you can choose and you start to buy from somebody that offer to take back the packages.
Exactly.
And then it will be the real thing. But I don't know if in Walmart is able to compete, because Amazon, that's a problem. They're controlling, about 82% of these deliveries.
Wow. Well, maybe that's something we can think of. I know Ray has a direct line to some very important people and government officials that he has very casual conversations with. And, maybe Ray can,
Please.
talk to them about this and see if they've considered this, especially City of Miami or Gables. I think Ray knows quite a bit about, obviously, the recycling market, and as some of you may know on this call, it changes, it shifts. Sometimes they're accepting more materials, sometimes they're like, I know plastics are just kind of the losers right now as far as recycling, unfortunately. But I just want to say real quick, Ray, before you say anything, is that we have somebody on this chat, Marcela Chamorro, who is Lady Green Miami Recycling, which, by the way, this is amazing. I've been looking for something like this, but she says that they offer a rebate plastic program for plastics number 5 and number 2, but they don't have the participation. So they were asking, what do they recommend to like get these solutions out to the citizens? Personally, Marcela, I would say that you need to get in touch with the local city governments because they do provide resources to the community as far as where to take things to be recycled. So, you may want to start with like a sustainability or a resilience officer. Barbara may be able to help you with some contacts on that, but I do know that, they're more receptive now to, like Barbara says, the public needs to figure out where to go to recycle things. So that would be a great place. And I would say Facebook, maybe running some sort of like inexpensive Facebook ads. And I don't know, Barbara.
The thing is to how to get with the government, because I'm sorry that I'm stopping you. There are technologies also to get the mixed plastics with all the types. So we cannot say, oh, I want number 2 and number 6 or this and that. All plastic comes with a big mishmash. There are technologies for that. There are different technologies to treat all kind of glass. That all the glass, or as far as I know, most of glass here go to landfill, which is nothing like so ridiculous. It's unbelievable. There are technologies. So if county or cities, but I would say that it's county the responsibility to look for technologies to put these factories that can use in different technologies to make different products from glass, because glass nobody knows what to do with the bottles over here. That's crazy. But bottle glass, flat glass, any other glass, this is the easiest material to be recycled forever. So, but everybody's lazy, all kind of programs or whatever, instead of take all the money, build a factory. There are technologies for glass, for plastic, for in Miami-Dade, you can make a factory for biomass to produce for all the biomass that goes around. Everything is possible to do, but nobody wants, it looks like nobody really interested in that, because nobody wants to look at the garbage. Most of us, I would say, care, okay, the garbage, like, okay, somebody carries, we don't know where it goes, we don't care. But that's not true, because at the end, with the landfill, it's going to our drinking water, it's contaminating everything. And then when it's contaminated, you can't clean it again.
Yeah. Yeah, and Ray, do you want to speak to anything about the recycled glass or anything? I know you know a lot about that.
Well, I mean, all those programs are great, and to identify companies that can use what's repurposed glass. Like for instance, we make composite bar that we could actually use milled and crushed glass. In concrete, you could use milled and crushed glass. I mean, obviously small sieves, you got to do a mass balance. How much energy am I actually using to do this? Because you don't want things to be infeasible. Your biomass to energy and or biochar, etc. Those are very, very good systems. And there's over 15, 20 of them in this country now that they're giving incentives for a county to actually implement. So that's gasification, pyrolysis, all of that is stuff that the county really should look into for this biomass. And same with plastics, thermocatalytic converters. I mean, there's all kinds of systems that we studied with the Department of Energy that can be used as an energy source internally and a byproduct that can be usable. I.e. carbon, embodied carbon, other other types of materials.
Definitely. No, I agree. And it just keeps going back to, we need to educate our government officials, let them know, like Ofer said, those technologies exist. Those technologies are out there. Why don't we have
they exist, and also it's identifying the companies that can benefit from some of this other material. I think Barbara spoke about that as well, if not Ofer as well. You got to find companies that can actually use some of this stuff that they're now sourcing from an outside source or from an overseas source that is having trouble because of transport, is getting taxed heavily because of transport. These are things that you could take a broader look and identify a few avenues that may work.
Let me tell you, I give you some examples that are really easy.
Yeah.
In many places, like in the world today, there are small machines that you can put in the garbage room or whatever, that they don't use too much energy. It's like just engines. That you put the bottles, it doesn't matter which bottles they are, and they crush them into sand, because that's what glass is.
Right.
And many places in islands that they don't have the means, like they bring the bottles of whatever drink and then they turn it into sand and they put it in the beach. You don't see the difference. It becomes a beach sand. Here, every time we have shortage of beach, they send some boats to Mexico somewhere to take some sand and bring it here, instead of just have a machine like that in each hotel and each apartment building on the beach, crush it and put it on the beach, and you have supply of sand all the time. These are very simple things, and of course you can do it the same in other places in the world. They do it for roads, for construction, for roads, pavement, or whatever, instead of quarry it in the Everglades or whatever that we see. If you come in the airplane, you see everything is quarried over there.
Yeah, limestone
And you crush it.
Correct.
So now you have it. You can use it in cement. Nothing. 0% of glass should go to a landfill. 0, because everything you can use in different levels, up to whatever you mix. Any mixer in the world that you have, you can crush it and use it as sand. You bring it back to a sand level. Either you produce glass again, or you do whatever you want, pavers, whatever. So I believe that the cities and the counties and the state, at least here, abandon it, because you see it's done in Europe all the time. Here, where if I have to see our industry, especially the building industry, we're more or less 40 years behind Europe in technology, more or less, especially in recycling.
Yeah, I mean, a perfect example. I mean, nobody wants to hear this, but in England, they recycle their water 7 times. I mean, they're using their fresh water 7 times over. That's incredible when you come to think about it. Not the best thought, but it is the way they're able to maintain sustainable and resilient to an extent. So it's also just identifying these technologies and making sure that the decision makers in government are aware of these technologies, that they put people in those positions that understand these technologies and how to assess them on the governmental level internally for that municipality, for your county, et cetera, for your region.
Yeah, 1000%. I see that very often, that the people who are put in some of those roles are, they need to be brought up to speed. They don't have the knowledge needed to be able to carry forth with, some of these big level strategies that they're tasked with. And we've run into some roadblocks, just me as a consultant and working with the county and different cities. And so, yeah, that's definitely very true, Ray. And then also having them incorporate into their funding and their budgets, right? It's like, okay, I think that's always the number one question, is where are we going to get the money from to pay for this? And then how do we do this? Like, those are usually the 2 questions. So, there's a lot of hand holding that has to go on, and guiding them through the process. But those people, we exist, those passionate people exist. It's just a matter of like, how do we get through these people? So Ray, you are our leader, Ray. You have a direct line to a lot of people, so I think that, Ofer, I would, anybody who's on this call or chat and is interested in kind of continuing this conversation and being a part of whatever initiative we decide to move forward with. But, I think it would be great if we could get together again, maybe on a little bit more informal, and we can brainstorm some ideas. But
100%. I'm
Great.
I'm willing to invite everybody for lunch or something here in Ironside. We can get together. We can try to invite some other officials and have a talk. So with lunch or like a little event in the evening. We'll sponsor it 100%, and to be pleasant, we can have an open talk. I believe that at least I believe we can get a few people, and if everybody will make an effort or put our efforts together, we can get decision makers and try to move something and see, to see how we can help with knowledge.
I agree. So everybody who's on this call, we will just collectively email everybody who was a part of this and let you know when we decide to get together in person. And maybe what we can do, Ofer, is whoever who can't make it in person will get on a Zoom and they can join us virtually. And we can continue on this conversation, because I'm sure we could all probably talk about this topic for 3 more hours. And but I want to just honor everybody's time. I see that it's 4:10. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone in the chat. Thank you, Valerie. Lice, make sure that you save the chat, because I saw some good information in there. And yeah, feel free to find me on LinkedIn. I'm on there, and so are my panelists. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I'll let Lice bring us home if she has anything else.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. I will save, and then we'll post on YouTube, so you can watch again, ask questions there, and then we can collect all the emails and get in touch with everyone.
Awesome.
Very good.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.